Olá, alunos de Tradução de Textos Técnicos Científicos. Essa videoaula é para dar algumas instruções sobre o próximo texto que vocês vão traduzir, que é um manual. Na verdade, um guia. Well, I'm going to talk about the difference. Just a moment. Translation of technical texts, a user guide. Well, there is a technical difference between guide and manual. The term manual or guide both usually refer to a document whose main aim is to provide information or instructions. It is generally expected that guides are shorter, concise, and more to the point than a manual. A manual is expected to give more in-depth information and instruction than a guide. However, in practicality, the terms are often used interchangeably. So, you should know that there is a technical difference. However, for your translations, you don't have to worry so much. You can simply use the word that it is in the original text. So, for example, if the text says guide, you can use guia. If the text says manual, you can translate it to manual. Well, the first tip is about parallel text. In this case, parallelism is going to be focused on bullets. Well, these are bullets, items, okay? So in manuals, usually there are items, it's very common, and what you have to pay attention to if the text is parallel. So in this case, for example, if you use a noun, you have to use a noun in every item. For example, manual, guide, instructions. I cannot use, for example, manual, guide, and to instruct, because instruct is a verb. Speaking of verbs, if you have a verb in one item, you should have a verb in all the other items. For example, to complete, to elaborate, to verify. You cannot say, for example, to complete, to elaborate, and verification, because verification is a noun. So if you use a verb for all of the items. If you use a sentence for all of the items. Sentence, subject, verb, object. What is important to know is that the idea of parallelism, you should know this concept, because it is a concept that it's more related to how stylish the text is less related to grammar. It's not a grammar mistake, but a stylistic mistake, actually. In a manual, usually the source text should be parallel. I mean, it should be written well, so it should be parallel. If it's not, you should improve the text. As an example, once I was translating a curriculum, a resume, and usually curriculums have bullets, items like this, and the items were not parallel in the source text. So I had to improve the text in the target text, the translation, okay? In this case, you don't have to improve, but you need to improve the text. But you should pay attention to the concept of parallelism, okay? The example here is that what you're going to translate, they are sentences. But the sentences, for example, here you have subject, verb, and object. High prolonged fever requires medical attention. The other three sentences are imperative. Do not allow, read the instructions, do not allow. And then the last one is subject, verb, and object again. Oral, underarm, and rectal temperatures may vary. There's no may here. Vary by approximately, blah, blah, blah. Well, so the sentences, if they are whole sentences, they don't have to be the same type of sentences. It could be a subject, verb, object, or imperative. But the idea is that they should be sentences, not, for example, a noun and then a sentence. Okay? Here I have sentences with the use of imperative, but the tips here are for you to be consistent regarding punctuation at the end. Here I'm using period and period. Pay attention if you use, for example, nothing. So nothing in all of the items. Here I used period for all of them, period for all of them, but here semicolon, semicolon, and period because this is the last one. If you use semicolon, pay attention to this. Semicolon for all the items and period for the last one. The source text should be correct in this, but if it's not correct, you improve your the text, the target text. However, even if the source text is correct, you have to pay attention to your typing. If you are typing the correct punctuation, or if you're just missing punctuation, okay? And also be consistent regarding the use of capital or lowercase letter in the beginning. Here I'm using capital letters for all of my examples. But you could use, for example, lowercase letters, but then you have to use lowercase letters for all of the items, okay? So be consistent in punctuation and the first letter. Again, pay attention to the source text. You can follow the lead. You can follow what the source text says, what the source text has, actually, not says, but has. But my point is you have to pay attention to your text. Your text, the final text, should be neat in all aspects. For example, you should pay attention to formatting, because these are a matter of formatting. You should pay attention to, for example, double spaces. You should pay attention to your typing. And these tips here, they are more related to the way you type and the way you produce your own texts than the translation itself, because the source text should be neat. Well, it depends, because the curriculum that I translated was not neat. Sometimes, if the source text is not published, for example, an individual client who wrote his own CV and then hasn't sent it to any company, but this person needs the CV to be translated, so it's not an official document that has been published, that has been proofread and edited for mistakes. So sometimes if you're working on a text like this, the text may have mistakes. But in the case you're going to translate here, it's the manual, so the source text should be neat and your translated text should be neat too. Here's a tip. If the source text is parallel, which should be, I just said that, if the text is already published as an official manual, for example, then the text is already parallel. And if it is, you don't have to worry about parallelism. You just follow the lead. If it's not, then you try to make it parallel in the target text so that it becomes more stylistic or more stylish. Longer sentences do not need to be parallel. Well, this sentence here refers to the fact that they are actually parallel, but as I mentioned, they do not have to be the same type of structure. Here we have subject, verb, object. The last one, subject, verb, object. But the second, third, and fourth, they are imperatives. So what I mean by they do not need to be parallel, I actually mean that they do not need to be the same types of sentences, the same structure of sentences, okay? They could be imperative or subject, verb, object, past or present, whatever, it works for the text, okay? Well, about imperatives. Imperatives in English, this is a picture of a cart, aqueles carrinhos de mala do aeroporto. Isso daqui, essa barra é o freio. Se você pressionar, você libera o freio para o carrinho andar. Se você não pressionar, o carrinho fica automaticamente já com o freio ativado. Well, you have here, pressione para baixo, and please press to release brake. I'm not going to talk about the release brake that is omitted here, but about the word please. In imperatives, in English, it's very common to use please. Other examples are, please watch your step. Please watch the gap. Na plataforma, entre aquele vão entre o trem e a plataforma, em português simplesmente cuidado com o vão, nem é imperativo, né? É cuidado com o vão, não é por favor, cuidado com o vão. Please watch your head. Quando vai sair da van tem aquele adesivo, cuidado com a cabeça, também não é por favor, cuidado com a cabeça. And why is that? It is because por favor in Portuguese is mostly used to really ask for a favor. Por favor, fecha a porta. Por favor, apaga a luz, etc. But in English, it's very common to use please in imperatives. So you might see please in manuals, like for example, please connect the cable to the device. You're not going to translate, por favor, conecte o cabo ao aparelho. Because it's not a favor, right? It's just a way of expressing. In English, you use please for imperatives, and in Portuguese, we do not use please for imperatives, which doesn't mean that we are not polite. It's just another use of language, okay? That reminded me that once I was reading a book in Portuguese, I don't remember the exact phrase, but the use of por favor caught my attention. It was something like this. Por favor, não se sinta frustrado se der errado. It was something like this. And then it caught my attention because it didn't sound natural. So I Googled the book in English and I found it. And in English, it was like something like, please do not feel frustrated, blah, blah, blah. But in Portuguese, it doesn't work very well. Okay, so pay attention to the use of please in imperatives, especially in manuals. Eu me lembro, inclusive, de uma discussão no Facebook na época da Copa, dizendo que os brasileiros eram mal educados porque as traduções para o português estavam todas para o inglês, né? Estavam todas com please e o português não tinha por favor, e que nós somos vira-latas de colocarmos em inglês esse please que por favor não tinha, ou que nós somos mal educados. Isso não é verdade. Acontece que a língua funciona de maneiras diferente, e o por favor ele é mais usado com favores realmente. Então, parênteses aqui, não é sobre a tradução do manual, mas um outro exemplo é quando você vai comprar um café, alguma coisa assim, se você tratar o atendente de maneira educada, no seu tom de voz, e falando obrigado, obrigado realmente é quase que obrigatório mesmo. O por favor em português ele é dispensável, em inglês não é. Você jamais vai pedir um café sem usar um please, jamais. Agora, em português ele é dispensável porque você está comprando alguma coisa e a pessoa está te vendendo, ela não está te fazendo um favor. Claro que você pode usar, não estou dizendo que você não pode, eu estou dizendo que se você não usar, a sua educação ela é expressa de outras maneiras, no seu tom de voz e tudo mais. A sua educação é expressa de outras maneiras. Em inglês, você pode simplesmente falar coffee please, né? Só falar o que você quer e um please depois. Então, existem algumas diferenças entre o uso de please e por favor. Aqui, para a nossa aula, eu estou chamando atenção somente porque o manual, eu realmente não me lembro se tem algum please no manual, mas para vocês terem essa consciência de algumas diferenças entre as línguas. Well, English or Portuguese in some cases. There should be instructions on how to deal with on-off keys. If there are not, ask the client whether you should translate them or not. Example, the trigger can be locked in the off position. O gatilho pode ser travado na posição off ou na posição desligado. Well, it depends on whether this will be translated in the product itself. So imagine the user has, for example, a remote control in his hands and is reading the manual, and the manual says, aperte o botão liga, and then the product itself, I mean the remote, does not have botão liga. It has an on-off key, but not liga desliga. So if the person does not know English, he will be lost. So the idea is that the manual matches the product, okay? So my suggestion is you should have a manual from your client telling you instructions, from your client telling you if you should translate these or not. But if you do not have instructions like that, just ask. In this case, in the activity you're going to do, I'm the client and I'm saying, do not translate them because the product will reach Brazilian consumers as it is. So I'm not going to change the product. I'm not going to translate the keys in the product. So you should not translate. But I strongly recommend you add a translation in parentheses. So for example, pressione a tecla on-off, entre parênteses, liga, desliga. That's the best way of translating manuals, okay? You are going to translate 2 pages of a user guide. In your report, do not forget to mention which user guides in Portuguese were used as reference. I've been saying this all the time, that you should use as reference for vocabulary and also pattern of speeches. You should use the same textual genre. In this case, a manual, a guide, and specifically, I mean, of course, it's more important to use the manual of the product you are translating. In this case, it is a thermometer. This is the manual. Some instructions here are: do not, you should omit the telephone numbers, because the company that distributes the product in Brazil is going to add their own telephone numbers, okay? Here and here you don't have to pay attention, you don't have to worry about that. And then here you just omit all this information, because this technical information is going to be added by the company that is distributing the product in Brazil. And here, saved first is the name, is the brand, the name of the product, so you do not translate this. And hospital's choice, there is a TM, which means trademark, é a marca registrada, igual aquele Rzinho, né, dentro de um círculo que nós temos em português. So you also should keep this, because this is an award. Quer dizer, pode até colocar alguma coisa como assim, prêmio Hospital's Choice. Então, isso é um trademark, vocês não vão traduzir uma marca registrada. É um prêmio que essa marca ganhou, como o prêmio se chama Hospital's Choice, quer dizer, é a escolha dos hospitais, como se esse tivesse sido a primeira escolha dos hospitais, mas é o nome de um prêmio. Então, não precisa traduzir ou pode acrescentar prêmio, Hospital's Choice, pode acrescentar isso. E aqui vocês omitem os telefones e omitem essa informação aqui embaixo também, que não é trabalho do tradutor. Ele vai ser adicionado pela empresa. E aqui eu vou adicionar uma foto melhor, porque essa foto não está muito boa. E muitos alunos erraram, por exemplo, o insertion gauge, por não entender o que é. Deixa eu mostrar. Esse é o termômetro. Insertion gauge é esse mostrador aqui. Ele parece um anel em alto relevo, porque o termômetro ele é usado também é um termômetro para crianças e pode ser usado em recém-nascido. Em recém-nascido você tira a temperatura anal e tem um limite de inserção. Isso daqui mostra qual é o limite de inserção. Então, esse que é o insertion gauge, ok? Well, guys, that's all for today. And if you have any questions, you just contact me. But that's the idea. You have some tips here. I'm going to make these slides available for you guys. You have the tips and you have a manual, only 2 pages actually, only for you to have some contact with this textual genre. And you're going to translate these 2 pages that I'm going to make it available for you in our platform. So, see ya.